Okay, so how many are we now? 21? Hello, everyone. Nice to see you all. Hello, Angel. From Shanghai, amazing.
Yeah, Shanghai.
Um,
Climate Fresk also.
oh, amazing. Great.
Yes.
Okay. Um, Tara, do you want to say something to introduce the session?
Sure thing. Welcome, everybody. We are so excited to have you all here. I know I'm really pumped for this event. We are stoked to have Pierre here from Climate Fresk to teach us all about, how Climate Fresk can really change our career and pivot and take us into really impactful work. So please, I shared in the chat, like share where you're tuning in from. We have folks from all around Europe. I even see someone from the US is here as well. And so we're thankful to have you all here. So yeah, share where you're tuning in from in the chat. And Pierre, we are ready to learn.
Cool. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you all. I'd like to see all your face, but I can't see everything on my screen. Anyway, I'm happy to be here. My name is Pierre Benregig. I come from France, and I used to be a researcher in the field of ocean renewable energy. And I am now a climate education activist. And I'm simply going to talk to you about how I went from researcher to climate education activist. But before I start, I better introduce what is Climate Fresk in case some of you don't know. So Climate Fresk is a scientific, collaborative, and empowering workshop that help people understand the causes and consequences of climate change. It uses 42 cards based on the IPCC report, and it is also an international community of committed facilitators and trainers who are trying to transform society. And it is also an NGO, an association that deploys this tool all around the world and aims at preserving life. The workshop is divided in several phases. In the first phase, people work together to position the 42 cards in an order from causes to consequences on the table. And at the end, they have produced a giant fresco explaining all the causes and consequences of climate change. After that, there is a phase where they can make their fresk beautiful, and then they can exchange on how they feel about climate change, and most and foremost, talk about action. What can they do to stop climate change? This workshop lasts 3 hours, and when I did it 5 years ago, it severely shook my world. And this is what I'm going to talk to you about now. But before that, before I start talking about me, I'd like to do a little quiz. A quiz about whoop, a quiz about some important orders of magnitudes about climate. So get your phones out and join the quiz. So you simply have to scan the QR code on the screen to join the quiz. You can simply open it in your browser on your phone. It should work. So I'll let you join. Excellent. I see people joining. I see a pair boy. I think I know who that is. Okay, a couple more seconds just for everyone to join. Don't worry, this quiz will be anonymous. It seems to have stabilized, so let's go for the quiz. First question, simple question. Have you already taken part in a Climate Fresk workshop? Simply yes or no. Okay, nice. It looks like a little 50-50. Excellent. I'm happy. Now let's dive into this quiz for real. Let's do a little travel back in time. I show you here two maps of Europe. One map on the left where the Earth was colder than now. It was 20,000 years ago, and Europe was covered in half by a giant ice sheet. This ice sheet was going down to Berlin. The glacier of the Alps was simply giant. There was so much ice actually on this ice cap that there was way less water in the ocean. And the UK was actually part of the continent. And then in 10,000 years, the planet has warmed up to go from a glacial era to an interglacial era, to go to the Europe that we know now, which is much warmer and much nicer to live in. This took 10,000 years, and it's a natural cycle. We oscillate between interglacial era and glacial era. My question is for this quiz, so get ready. After the last ice age, 20,000 years ago, by how many degrees did the average temperature on Earth rise in 10,000 years? I'll let you 5 seconds to answer. Don't hesitate to say if you don't know, it's okay. There's always a possibility to say I don't know. So we get some different answers. Excellent. We get a massive crowd saying 5 degrees, and that's the right answer. Only 5 degrees to go from the glacial era 20,000 years ago to the Europe that we know now, and that took 10,000 years. This is the same thing that I just explained in a graph. 20,000 years ago, temperature were lower on Earth. Then they warm up slightly, slowly. Then we invented agriculture when it was warmer on Earth. Jesus Christ was born in year 0. And then industrialization arrived. Now, next question. By how many degrees did the average temperature on Earth rise since 1850? I wait for your answer. 3 more seconds. Don't hesitate if you don't know, just say it, it's okay. Here we go. Oh, a big crowd saying 1.2 degrees. You can still answer if you're late. And that's true, that was the right answer, 1.2 degrees. This is how much the planet has warmed up since 1850. And this is the same graph that I just showed you with a couple more years. So we see that temperature has started rising extremely fast, and now we are 1.2 degrees higher than when my great-great-great-grandparents were born. And the red curve is the dynamic in which we are in. Now, are humans solely responsible for the current climate change? That's a big question. Three more seconds. Okay, so we get many people saying human activities are accelerating a natural climate change. A lot of people saying, yes, human activities are solely responsible. Yeah, so that's the right answer. The red one, the green one, sorry. Human activities are solely responsible for this change. It is now unequivocally, global warming is unequivocally due to our activities, agriculture, transportation, building use, industry, through deforestation and fossil fuel burning. And natural phenomena have had on average, a negligible influence on the timescale we considered from 1850. This is one of the main conclusion of the last IPCC report that makes the synthesis of all the scientific literature we have on climate change. Next question, get ready, guys. What is the international climate change mitigation goal? The aim is to mitigate climate change and limit it to a certain rise below a certain level. 2 more seconds. Okay, so here we get only good answers. The right answers were 2 degrees, below 2 degrees and below 1.5. This happened in 2015 in Paris during COP21. Countries of the world have agreed to limit global warming below 2 degrees and continue efforts to even limit it even below 1.5. So everyone was right on that question. Now a little bit more complicated, guys. Get your phones ready. How many tons of CO2 equivalent does your lifestyle generate per year? What is your carbon footprint? I'm curious to know. I'm curious to know if you know. Okay, 2 more seconds. Okay. Okay, well, we get 1/3 of people that don't know that. That's interesting. We get more than half that indicated between 5 and 15. Excellent. It's probably your carbon footprint is probably between 5 and 15 tons CO2 equivalent per year per person. But this depends a lot on who you are, who you live, where you live, and how you live, basically. Here you get some orders of magnitudes of the carbon footprint, the individual carbon footprint in different areas of the world. So in Europe, for example, the average is close to 10 tons per person per year. In America, it's twice more. In South Asia, the average is between 2 and 3. And in sub-Saharan Africa, it's below 2 tons of CO2 equivalent per person per year. This is the same graph to say the same thing. So it depends a lot on the region where you live. But it also depends on how rich you are, basically. This is a very interesting graph from the World Inequality Report. And if you look at Europe, you see that half of the people in Europe have a carbon footprint, the ones that have the lowest income, so the half of the population that have the lowest income, the average of their carbon footprint is about 5 tons. And in the same region, the top richest percent, the 10% richest, have a carbon footprint of about 30. And on average, in Europe, it's about 10. It's very different in South and Southeast Asia, where half of the population has a carbon footprint at about 1 ton CO2 equivalent per year, and where the richest 10% have a carbon footprint of about 10. So these are very interesting orders of magnitudes. Now I have a last question for you guys. Get ready. And after that, I start talking about me. How many tons of CO2 equivalent can we afford to emit individually per year by 2050 if we want to respect the Paris Agreement, the international mitigation goal? 3 more seconds. Okay, so we get 10% people that don't know, less than 5 tons per CO2 for about 20% of the participants. And a lot of people answered less than 2 tons. Well, they were right. um, we need to emit way less than 2 tons. So let's see that in a graph. This is how it looks like currently in different regions of the world. On average, we are about between 6 and 7 tons on average in the world. And in less than 30 years, we should be on average below 2 tons per person per year. If we look at France, this is how it looks like. In France, we are about the average is about 10 tons CO2 equivalent per year per person. It's relatively well distributed between transportation, food, housing, and consumption, a little bit of public services. And in 25 years, we need to be below 2 tons. So well done for everyone. Well done for making this effort. I just wanted to test and give you some orders of magnitudes. I'll stop sharing my screen now if I manage. Yes. I hope you're all right. And I'll start talking about me now. So I'm 33 years old. I graduated from a French engineering school in France. It was about 10 years ago. And I specialized in energy system. And after that, I did a PhD in ocean renewable energy in the University of Cork in Ireland. And I graduated from this PhD when I was 27. And as you can imagine, I was quite proud of myself. I was a doctor and I was going to contribute to the energy transition. And right after my PhD, I came back to France and I started hearing about a workshop called Climate Fresk, where people played with some cards to better understand what's going on with climate change. And I thought it was very cool that people get interested in this important topic. And actually, many people I knew in France had taken part in this workshop and started recommending it to me. But this thing was not exactly for me, you know. I'm a doctor in renewable energy. I know about climate change, and I'm actually part of the solution. So playing with some cards for 3 hours, not exactly for me. But I kept hearing more and more about the workshop. So I eventually decided to go and discover it. And guys, I literally fell off my chair. Climate change is frightening. I kind of knew about that. But honestly, I didn't think it was that bad, first. And second, I realized how ignorant I was on the topic. Do you remember this quiz that we just had there, these few questions? After my PhD, I wouldn't have been able to answer more than 1 or 2 of them, just to let you know about the level of my ignorance. Even though I was a young doctor in ocean renewable energy, I clearly didn't know all the consequences of climate change, how bad they could become within my lifespan. I didn't know the timescales. I didn't have any useful orders of magnitude about emissions. So I let you imagine how I felt. I didn't feel good at all. I share my screen again. I didn't feel good at all. And I remember feeling angry, shameful, and scared. I felt angry. I felt angry at me, actually. I felt angry because I thought I knew a lot, but I actually didn't. My understanding of the climate change issue was very superficial. And I knew that the people around me didn't know more than me. So my family, my friends, even my research colleagues. So I felt very angry at me. I also felt quite shameful because for my friends, for my family, for society, I was part of the solution. I definitely was, but I thought I was even the solution. Um, but I realized that I really did not even understand the problem. So that felt really bad. And in the end, finally, I felt really scared because climate change is scary anyway. But here I was scared because if me, as a doctor in renewable energy, didn't have a good understanding of the problem, who has then a good understanding of the problem? Who's on top of it? Who's managing this issue? And is this being managed correctly? So I felt really scared after the workshop. And so after we built the fresco, the facilitator gave us the opportunity to talk about our emotions. So I felt full, I felt scared, I felt angry, and I heard also the other people feeling very powerful emotions. And that has let us brainstorm on solutions about climate change. So how can we stop climate change? What can we do as individuals, as consumers, as employees, researchers, or as companies or even states? And again, in this part of the workshop, I realized that in the time frame we have, those 25 years, renewable energy definitely are a solution, but they're only a small part of the solution. And stopping climate change will definitely require way more than that, way more profound changes. And I was also realizing that my own life was definitely not in line with the necessary changes. So basically, I understood that we need to reinvent how we produce, how we consume, how we eat, how we use buildings, how we transport ourselves, our whole economy, and how happy we are, why we're happy, with what we're happy. And I was basically starting to take the measure of the gap. There is the gap we need to cross to achieve stopping climate change. And at the end of the workshop, the facilitator told us that we could all become climate Fresk facilitators, and that it is important to deploy those basic knowledge in society, because understanding the problem is a necessary condition to start solving it, even though it's not sufficient. So after the workshop, I started doing two things. I learned more and more and more about climate change with conferences, with books, with articles, and I started facilitating climate Fresk around me. I became a climate Fresker. So I started playing with my family, with my friends, with my colleagues, within universities, in the city council of my city. I started playing climate Fresk with everyone I could, aside of my job. So I did this volunteering activity aside of my job for about 2 years, and that was just great. I met so many Freskers that inspired me a lot. I learned a lot, and it was so damn useful. People were very happy to better understand what climate change really is. They were very grateful to me as well, and it was extremely satisfying for me and a lot of sense. Actually, one of the things that was the most interesting was to facilitate climate Fresk in my research lab with my colleagues. It was very important for me because in the lab, we were talking about renewable energy every day, but we never talked about climate change. Never, ever. And it was a little bit driving me mad. So I started playing climate Fresk with my colleagues. And again, that was so damn useful. I brought up the topic there, and most of my colleagues were very happy. Um, but interestingly, some of them refused to play. Some of them wouldn't even understand why it is important to talk about climate change in one of the most famous research lab on renewable energy in France. Why do you come and bother us with this topic? What can we do anyway? Who are we to change anything? This is the kind of reactions I had facilitating the workshop. So it really showed me and convinced me that there was a big knowledge gap to start solving climate change for real. And this knowledge gap was making it completely impossible to act correctly about climate change. But anyway, it took me, so it gave me even more motivation. So I continued my involvement with the Climate Fresk NGO. And actually in November 2021, I went to COP26 in Glasgow, UK, Scotland, with the Climate Fresk NGO and with many other freskers. And I actually met the inventor of Climate Fresk, Cédric Ringenbach. After COP, he actually offered me a job in his own company as a climate change consultant to deploy Climate Fresk within big companies. That was a nice opportunity, but you can imagine that it was a tough choice for me because I had worked very hard to be a researcher, to get a PhD and get a position in a nice research lab in France. So joining Cedric's company basically would mean that I change direction and kind of sit on what. But the choice was actually relatively easy. I made this choice relatively easy. I was happy about this opportunity. And my reasoning was the following. What is the point of doing research on new renewable energy when researchers, engineers, bankers, politicians, decision makers haven't taken the measure of the climate situation? So I made my choice and my professional career took a turn, definitely. I became a professional climate fresker and I played cards with people. So I worked with Cedric for a year and a half. We deployed Climate Fresk in very big companies from all sectors: transportation, building industry, luxury, oil and gas, agriculture, agro-industry, pharmaceuticals, and more. And we reached really powerful decision makers. It was always useful. And the objective was to help them initiate a strategic reflection on how to change and adapt their business model to make it compatible with a world that is truly reducing emissions very quickly. So that was our own activity, but in the meantime, many thousands of other freskers were doing the same in the rest of society. And the result is here. We are almost reaching 2 million people that have taken part in the Climate Fresk workshop. We'll soon reach that, so probably before the end of the year. And back in the days when I became a fresker in 2020, the numbers were really low, extremely low. You see, it's a nice exponential. So the workshop is really deploying everywhere, in the private sector, in the public sector, and in many countries. So people have played Climate Fresk in more than 160 countries now. But what Climate Fresk truly achieved is that it really launched a massive movement of education on ecological topics. Many other workshops were invented based on the same principle to talk about biodiversity, to talk about digital technology, water cycle, soils, agriculture, etc. Many other fresks-like workshops were invented and deployed in society. And thanks to Climate Fresk, the topic of climate change is now everywhere in France. I can really see it from my point of view in France. Climate Fresk really achieved that in France. It put climate change everywhere. And it's now normal that engineering students know about climate change, not like me back in the days. It's now normal that business students know about climate change. It is very common in companies to have workshops about the topic, and even in the public sector. To let you know, last year, the Prime Minister in France has launched a mandatory training for all the top-level civil servants of the country to train them about climate change, biodiversity, and resources. It's a very interesting of 20 hours, and it's big. And to my knowledge, it's the first one of its kind. I've never seen that in another country. So it's amazing news, and the training has started this year, and it's actually what got me busy this year. So I contributed a lot to this training. I trained close to 500 top civil servants on the topic of climate change. And from what I know, yeah, it's the first of its kind in the world. So yeah, this is how I changed my career. I'm glad of the choices I made. And this is what I do now. So I basically facilitate workshops and trainings, not only Climate Fresk. Climate Fresk was my first step into that. But I now facilitate several workshops and trainings. I also carry out carbon footprint analysis for companies, and I help them developing action plans for companies. Well, action plans and how to reduce emissions. And of course, aside of my job, I keep volunteering for Climate Fresk and for other NGOs. I keep putting some more energy so that those basic knowledge about climate change spread in society. But actually, it's not the only thing that I changed in the past 5 years, thanks to Climate Fresk. I had realized that my life was definitely not in line with the current issue we have. My carbon footprint was about 10, 12 tons. And in 5 years, I had decided to make some changes to reduce my carbon footprint. And this is what I did. In 5 years, I managed to reduce my carbon footprint by half. And for that, I had to question a lot of things in my life. First thing was, do I need a car? Where do I go on holiday? What do I eat? Who are my friends in this low carbon life? What makes me truly happy and is compatible with a low carbon world? All those questions, I won't go into details here. It took me a while. It wasn't easy at first. And it's never easy to change some habits and way of life. But clearly, I'm way happier now because life is fun, and also because it really shows that even at my own level, I can already cut my emissions by 50%. So it's really satisfying and gives a lot of hope for the future. Anyway, this was just to say that the Indian Climate Fresk did not only change my career, but also my life in a way. So what's next for me? Well, Climate Fresk has deployed very well in France and has started in many countries, but there is still a lot to do there is still a lot to do and room for acceleration of the deployment of Climate Fresk in the world. So this is why next year, actually in January, I'm off to Brazil. I'll be sailing to Brazil to stay there for a year and a half during the year of COP. So next year, COP 30 will take place in Brazil, and I want to leverage this event and accelerate the deployment of Climate Fresk in this big and important country for the whole year, and also be present at COP when that happens to represent the NGO. So that's it for my story. I hope it was interesting. It's a very humble sharing of my life here. If I want to finish with a call to action, I really invite you to keep learning about climate change. If I was to suggest one book, it would be that one, A World Without End, from a French engineer called Jean Covici. It's not a book, it's like a comic, and it's excellent, yeah, excellent material to learn. So this helped me a lot. My second advice would be to meet people and talk about climate change. Get yourself surrounded to choose the best way of action. And don't do like me. Don't necessarily quit your job. Just bring up the topic and strive to include it in every decision in your organization. And Climate Fresk may be an excellent tool for that, just like it was for me in the research lab. So that's it for my story. Thank you guys for your attention, and we stay here for a couple more minutes if there are some questions. So I happily open the floor if there are some questions. Valentin, you have a question?
Yes, Pierre. Hi. Thank you so much for the presentation. It's really refreshing to see someone engaging with the community in the way you are doing through Climate Fresk. Something you mentioned struck with me. I wanted to ask you about it. So you mentioned how you went on this journey of finding your purpose and also reducing your own footprint by 50%. And I find this idea fascinating, which is first being aware of our individual footprints as people. But then if I make a 1% change and you make a 1% change and everyone in this call makes a 1% change and the 2 million people you've engaged with make a 1% change, those small behavior changes, which don't make our lives worse, but hopefully keep it in the same level in quality or even better them, they aggregate through community. And you mentioned you help with reporting and reducing corporate carbon footprints, I think you mentioned. I'm wondering if you're also engaging with the Climate Fresk community, those 2+ million members, in that way too, or if there's an opportunity there to show people that, hey, businesses are doing what businesses are doing. You can do what you can do at work as well. But if we all rally together and we change by 1% in like a few months, or by 3%, and that compounds, I find that idea really fascinating. And I'm wondering if that's something that you have considered with your colleagues you're working at, or if it is something you're already doing.
Thanks, Valentin. Well, if everyone in the world changes by 1%, the overall result is only 1%. So changes need to be way stronger than that and go deeper. This is what I start with my own self, and this is actually what most climate freskers try to do at their own level. But they don't stop here. Climate freskers don't stop here. They know that individual change will not be enough, and that society in its globality needs to change. And this is why we talk about climate change, and this is why we facilitate climate risk in companies, for the public sectors, for families, for everyone, because we know that it has to be a systemic change, not only individual. I hope that answers to your question, Valentin.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
I haven't seen the chat. I can't look at it. If you want to ask a question, please do.
Hello. I'd like to ask a question.
Yeah.
If, as you mentioned, I am Brazilian actually, and as you mentioned that you are going there, but I'm living in Germany now and have lived in Portugal for 30 years. And as you mentioned that are you going to the COP30? My question is there these cards translated to Portuguese? And I don't know
Yes.
how is it. I never participate in a workshop, and I would like to know if it's possible to use it and make this workshop in schools, and also if is there in schools and with the students or young people also online, and if it's also available in Portuguese. A lot of questions.
Absolutely. Are you Luciana? Is it? No,
Sorry, and I am Victoria.
Victoria. Okay, I can't see your name.
I am here.
Thank you, Victoria. Yeah, well, Climate Fresk is available in Portuguese. First answer, and great news.
Okay.
It's also available online. You can play Climate Fresk online. Same principle. You need a couple of participants and a facilitator, but it can happen online. And it's excellent for schools. And tomorrow you can train yourself. You can discover the workshop. Just need to go on climatefresk.org, and you'll find all the information. And I'm sure the website. Oh no, the website is not yet in Portuguese, but the cards definitely exist in Portuguese. The
And
cards
to
exist.
become a facilitator, there is a course. How is it? Is expensive? Is take a long time? How is it?
To become a facilitator, you first need to discover the workshop as a participant,
Of course.
and then you can train yourself with a 3 hour. It's a 3 hour training. So the workshop is 3 hour, and then the training is 3 hour, and then you can use it as you like.
And to be part of a training, I can also find in this fresk.org, no? The climate fresk.org.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
And I can take part, join some online workshop. I can.
Exactly.
Oh, perfectly. Okay, thank you.
Before any more question, the workshop exists in more than 50 languages.
Wow.
So I'm sure your language is there too. I think Olesia, you raised your hand.
Yes, hi, Claire. Thank you very much. I've seen it already online. People say they participated, but I'm definitely much more kind of understanding much better what it is after this presentation. Thank you very much. Very insightful. My question is, how did you overcome those sessions where certain participants didn't want to participate? And especially if you had such experience among your friends when you try to organize, friends or family. So what would you advise in these situations?
I didn't get the second part of the question.
And if that happened with your family or friends, what did you do to overcome this kind of reaction of not wanting to participate? To find out more.
Yeah. Well, first thing, most people are very happy to participate. So that's the first thing. Second, those that don't want to participate usually just don't show up. And sometimes in companies, for example, when people have to come, it's mandatory for people, then sometimes you get we get weird situations. However, the climate fresk is really just understanding the issue and then start talking about solutions, but nothing, I mean, we don't, as a facilitator, I don't give solutions at all. I'm just showing the problem and helping people to understand. So my posture, my position is really, I would say, neutral. So I've never had any issue with participants. I can see sometimes that people are not very happy to be here, but it's still a serious game. So you can, yeah, even with people that are reluctant to talk about climate change, it's the perfect tool. This is what I think. So no big issues on my side.
Thank you.
Hi, can I ask a question?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Pierre, for sharing your story and experience. It's indeed always good to hear, people are making positive change for the world. I wonder if you have this kind of experience because I mean I know that you can only concentrate on your own personal behavior change if you want to reduce your own individual emission. But for example, in conversation with my friend, they say, well, individual emission is nothing comparable to big corporations' gestures. If they are not doing enough, what change could I make? What's the point of me reducing 1% of my individual emission? So I wonder if you have any advices to share our experiences to share so that I can, because when I hear them saying that, they kind of have an impact on myself as well. Like I'm like, oh, okay, well, is it really helpful enough for myself to work on my emissions?
Yeah, sure. Well, yes, I do have something. Just give me 1 second so I find it. It's something that we use a lot in the Climate Fresk workshop. Give me 1 second to find it in English. It's something we call the triangle of inaction. 1 second.
Pierre, I've put 2 versions in the chat if that makes it easier.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, Ash. I recognize this voice. Oh. Okay. I share my screen. So yes, I use this. Do you see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So basically society, if you do a very simple model of society, you have the people, citizens, you have the companies, and you have countries. And when you start talking about climate change and talking about change, necessary changes, the natural reaction of people is just to point the others. So citizens are pointing towards companies and pointing towards states, saying, look, my emissions are tiny compared to companies and compared to states. So the changes I make will not make any difference. But companies, they actually say the same. Companies say we are simply answering the demand. We are covering the demand of the citizens. So when the citizens change, we will change our offer. But as long as the citizens want something, we will provide it. And if we stop providing it, they'll just go to the next company that is still offering it. And we will lose some market and we will have to do bankrupt. But they are also pointing toward the states because some companies are willing to change. You know, there are a lot of directors of company that have understood the climate situation and that really want to change. However, they are stuck because the competition on the market is so strong. So if they make a change, they may raise, they may have to do investments or raise temporarily their prices, so they lose the market. So they look at states and say, well, you can change the rules. You can change the rules of competition. So I'm waiting for you to act. And then states, they actually do exactly the same, and it's natural. They say, okay, well, we got most of us. Well, if we look at France, for example, it's a democracy. It's the people that vote for their chiefs. And the states, they say, well, the people haven't voted for us, so we save the environment. They have voted for us for different reasons. So when the people will really want to make a change, we'll do it. But for now, we don't see any, people are not ready for the changes that we have to do. So we just don't do anything. We're waiting for them. And they also look at the companies saying, well, you guys have the money and you are the responsible polluters. So just you can make the necessary change. So everyone's pointing at each other and nothing is happening. So basically to start acting about climate change, one needs to break this triangle of inaction. And if I'm a citizen, the only thing I can do is, okay, start doing something without having to wait for companies and states. So I do what I can do with my own hands. And then companies can do the same. Companies can definitely act without waiting too much for citizens and states. Of course, there will be a limit. They won't be able to do everything, but they can do something. And slowly, and states are the same. So slowly and slowly, the three coins of this triangle, the 3 points of this triangle can move together towards reducing emissions. Yeah, so this is what we use in Climate Fresk usually, and it works quite well. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I took also a screenshot of your
Cool.
share.
Cool.
Thanks.
Any more question before we say bye-bye?
I have one, Pierre.
Go on, Ash.
So knowing where you were, where you had a position as kind of an expert and as a holding a PhD, but were unable or unwilling to listen, what tips would you have to give people to try and convince those that hold lots of knowledge that to give them some humility to engage with us on topics? Kind of do like you did and say, hang on a minute. For you, it was repeatedly hearing about the same thing, but do you have any other tips you would give?
Yeah, maybe show that some peers are questioning some stuff. There are some groups of scientists that have gathered together. I think Scientists for Climate or something like that. These are researchers that have also started questioning the choices of research, etc., and realizing that peers are questioning themselves can help you realize that you kind of need to question yourself too. Yeah. And other than that, oh, maybe as well, yeah. So for the people who know a lot, for the people who know a lot, one way to get them interested in Climate Fresk is simply to tell them, this is an interesting tool for you. You know a lot about climate change. And if you want to talk about it or get inspired for developing your own tool, or for just come to the workshop and discover the workshop. That can be one way.
Thank
I
you.
hope that answers your question, Ash. If you have any suggestions of answer as well, don't hesitate. Any more question? Maybe one last question before we. Oh, it's already 5. Yeah, one last question. Okay, guys, well, we'll stop the session now. I thank you very much for your attention, and I invite you all to discover the workshop, the Climate Fresk workshop, and I wish you all the best.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.